I've been having a few challenges, and I've been coming before the Lord about what He's been showing me and just my whole walk of faith myself. And when I opened my Bible, I was turned to Exodus 12:31, and I was prompted to read that. And in Exodus 12:31 it says, "Then he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, 'Rise, go out from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as you have said.'" I was asking the Lord why he told them to leave by night, because that's something that kind of jumped out at me. And then he said he would explain it to me. So he said, read Exodus 14:10. So in Exodus 14:10 it says, "And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were very afraid, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord." And then the Holy Spirit asked me, he said, "Well, what do you get from reading that verse?" And I told him, well, I think it's showing me that when I started to look at the enemy and the tricks that the enemy is trying to use against me, I'm starting to get scared and starting to lose faith, and I'm calling out to God for help. So he said the reference to the night that I see in there is that when you're in a time period where you're getting very overwhelmed with your situation and things start to look dark, so that's why it's referring to night, and that's why I'm showing you Exodus 12:31. So he said read Exodus 14:15, so we're carrying on. And it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff,'" this is 16, "'and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry land. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they will go in after them.'" So reading Exodus 15 to 17, it says, I was asking the Lord, "Are you telling me to stop calling on you, and that you're going to let the enemy keep coming after me?" And he said, "Yes, read on." So I was thinking, well, that sounds kind of scary, he's telling you that he's going to harden the hearts of the Egyptians so they keep coming after you. So in verse 19 it says, "And the angel of God who went before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud went from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud of darkness to one, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one did not come near the other all that night." So the Holy Spirit said, "I'm showing you that when I sent my son Jesus to the cross to die for you, he paid the price for your salvation. And the angel is one of Jesus' angels, and is working for him." So when we see the angel of God going out before the Israelites, that's, we know the Lord has already led the way, but in this situation it's showing that the angel went behind them, okay, and the cloud went from before them and stood behind them as well. So he said, well, he says it's Jesus' angel, and he's working for him. So he's standing in between you and the enemy. He said Satan's forces cannot see past Jesus. He's in the middle. He's blocking the way so the enemy cannot see you or touch you. They can't get past him to you. And he said, keep reading. So in Exodus 21 it says, "Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left." So I said, "Are you telling me that?" He said, "I'm telling you that you are in control. Stretch out your hand in faith and reach for me. And when you are going through on dry land, the sea of doubt you are in cannot take over you as long as you trust me." He said, "When your hand is outstretched and you're reaching for Jesus and connecting to him, all the enemy can see is Jesus in the middle, and that he died on the cross and that he has defeated them." So keep on reading. So in Exodus 14:23 it says, "The Egyptians pursued them, and all the Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud and at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving, and the Egyptians said, 'Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt.'" Notice we are still operating in the night, is what Holy Spirit was telling me. And he said, and look at it, it said it was the last watch. Didn't it say the last watch in the verse? I said yes. He said, because the dark hour you are in, the dark hour you're viewing, is coming to an end, as I'm defeating the enemy for you. So we're going through in the darkness, but there's a light at the end of it. He said your enemy has to flee because he can only see Jesus in the middle fighting for you. And that's why he's so confused. He does not see you fighting, he only sees Jesus fighting, and he knows that Jesus defeated him at the foot of the cross, and so he has to flee. So in verse 26 it says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak, so now we're going into daylight, the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. So I was asking, well, why did Moses have to keep stretching out his hand over the waters? He said each time he did it, it showed an act of faith, and it allowed me to work on his behalf. I said, oh, so that's why he keeps doing that. And the Holy Spirit told me, yes, faith without works is dead. He said the enemy has to be completely wiped out because it cannot come back a second time. He said when you read Nahum 1:9, it says, What do you conspire against the Lord? He will make an utter end of it. Affliction will not rise up a second time. So the Lord's saying, I went out and I defeated the enemy. I completely have wiped him out. He cannot come back a second time. So do not worry about that, whatever it is that's bothering you. At the end it says in verse 29, But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him, and Moses his servant. So he says, all I'm telling you is to trust me, just like I told Peter when he stepped out of the boat. Read Matthew 14:22-33. That also took place in the night and involved water. So he said, I'm just working with you on building your faith, and I just want you to keep your hand outstretched and keep stretching it out, because I'm not going to let you down.